The dust swirled around the mining equipment as it dug deeper into the red soil of Kepler 442. This remote planet sat at the edge of known space, far from the busy trade routes and gleaming cities of the Galactic Federation. For 3 months, the mining crew had been pulling rare metals from the ground, working 12-hour shifts in the thin atmosphere. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he walked along the security perimeter. At 28 years old, he was just another human trying to make a living in a galaxy filled with alien races. His job was simple: watch the equipment, check the barriers, and make sure nobody stole anything valuable. It was boring work, but it paid well enough to send money back to his sister on Earth. The mining operation belonged to Stellar Industries, one of the few human companies that could compete with alien corporations. Most of the workers were human, but the supervisors came from different species across the galaxy. The Zentari used their mental powers to scan for mineral deposits. The Krell provided muscle for heavy lifting. The Axiom robots handled the dangerous chemical processing. Everyone had their place in the Federation. Dr. Amanda Brooks ran the archaeological team that worked alongside the miners. She was a thin woman with gray hair who spent most of her time studying alien artifacts. The Federation required all mining operations to report any historical finds, and Amanda made sure they followed the rules. She treated every broken piece of alien pottery like it was made of gold. "Jake, come look at this," Amanda called from across the dig site. She was standing next to a deep hole where the mining equipment had been working. "The scanners are picking up something unusual down there." Jake walked over and looked into the hole. The mining laser had cut through layers of rock and soil, revealing something that gleamed in the artificial lights. It was not metal or stone, but something that seemed to glow with its own inner light. "What do you think it is?" Jake asked. "I have no idea," Amanda replied. "But it is definitely not natural. The energy readings are off the charts." The excavation took 2 days. Slowly, carefully, the team dug around the object until they could see its full shape. It was about the size of a baseball bat, made from some kind of crystal that shifted between different colors. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that none of the translation computers could understand. "It is voidborn," whispered Kethver, the Zentari researcher who had come to examine the find. His large, egg-shaped head tilted as he studied. "The artifact, I can sense the psychic resonance. This technology is over 50,000 years old." Everyone on the dig site stopped working. The Voidborn were legendary throughout the galaxy. They had been the first intelligent species to develop faster-than-light travel, the first to build cities that spanned entire star systems. Then, for reasons nobody understood, they had simply vanished. All that remained were ruins and artifacts that no living species could activate or understand. "Are you sure?" Amanda asked. "Voidborn artifacts are incredibly rare. Most of them are in museums or private collections. I am certain," Kethver replied. "This is definitely their work. See how the crystal seems to bend light around itself? That is a signature of their technology." Commander Vextel, an Alterian with silver skin and glowing blue eyes, stepped forward. Half of his body had been replaced with cybernetic implants that enhanced his strength and speed. "If this is truly Voidborn, then we must contact Federation headquarters immediately. Such discoveries are too important to be handled by a simple mining operation." Word spread quickly through the camp. Within hours, ships began arriving from across the sector. Federation scientists, military officers, and government officials all wanted to see the artifact. The small mining camp became a crowded hub of activity. The weapon, as the experts began calling it, was moved to a secure laboratory tent. Every species in the Federation sent their best people to study it. The Zentari tried to read its psychic imprints. The Krell attempted to activate it through physical contact. The Axiom ran every possible scan and analysis. Nothing worked. "Fascinating," muttered Dr. Elena Hayes, a human scientist who specialized in alien technology. "The quantum signature is completely stable, but there is no obvious power source. It is as if the weapon exists in multiple dimensions at once." Jake watched the proceedings from a distance. As head of security, he was supposed to monitor all the new arrivals and make sure nobody tried to steal the artifact. But mostly he just stood around feeling useless while much smarter people tried to solve the mystery. Days passed. The weapon remained inactive despite the efforts of dozens of experts. Theories were proposed and discarded. Some thought it might be a key to unlock other void-born sites. Others believed it was a communication device. A few suggested it might be a weapon of incredible power, capable of destroying entire star systems. The problem, explained Dr. Hayes during one of the daily briefings, is that we are approaching this from our own perspective. Each species thinks in terms of their own abilities. The Zentari assume it requires psychic activation. The Krell think it needs physical strength. The Axiom believe it responds to digital signals. But what if we are all wrong? Jake found himself working longer shifts as more people arrived at the camp. The Federation had declared the site a restricted zone, which meant extra security checks and constant patrols. He was tired and frustrated, especially when he overheard some of the alien scientists talking about how primitive humans were compared to other species. On the 10th day after the discovery, Jake was doing his evening security rounds when he decided to check on the laboratory tent. The night shift was lighter, with only a few researchers still working. Most of the important people had gone to their quarters to rest. The weapon sat on a special platform in the center of the tent, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Lights blinked on various machines, recording data that nobody could understand. Jake had seen it dozens of times, but tonight something felt different. The artifact seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. "Still no luck, I see?" Jake said to Dr. Hayes, who was studying readings on a computer screen. "Nothing at all," she replied without looking up. "It is like the weapon is waiting for something specific, but we have no idea what that might be." Jake walked closer to the platform. The weapon's surface seemed to ripple like water, and the symbols carved into it appeared to shift and change. He had never noticed that before. "Has it always moved like that?" he asked. Dr. Hayes looked up from her computer. "Moved like what?" "The symbols. They seem to be dobbing." "I do not see any movement," Dr. Hayes said, walking over to stand beside him. "The surface has been completely static since we found it." Jake stared at the weapon. The symbols were definitely moving, forming patterns that almost looked like writing. Without thinking, he reached out toward the crystal surface. "Do not touch it!" Dr. Hayes shouted, but she was too late. Jake's fingers brushed against the smooth crystal. The moment his skin made contact, the world exploded into light. Energy surged through his body like liquid fire. His vision filled with colors that had no names. In his mind, he heard a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Selection complete. Neural compatibility confirmed. Heir apparent identified. Bonding sequence initiated." The weapon began to glow brighter than the sun. Every piece of equipment in the tent started sparking and smoking. Dr. Hayes stumbled backward, shielding her eyes from the brilliant light. Alarms began blaring throughout the camp as the energy surge overloaded the power systems. Jake felt the weapon melting into his hands, flowing up his arms like liquid metal. There was no pain, only a strange sensation of completeness, as if he had been missing a part of himself his entire life. The crystal substance merged with his nervous system, spreading through his body until it reached his brain. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. The light faded, the alarm stopped. Jake stood in the center of the tent, his hands empty, but he could feel the weapon inside him. It was part of him now, woven into his very being. "What have you done?" Dr. Hayes whispered, staring at him with wide eyes. Jake looked at his hands. They appeared normal, but he could sense energy flowing through them. He could feel the weapon's consciousness touching his mind, ancient and vast and patient. "I do not know," he said honestly, "but I think it chose me." The transport ship that carried Jake to Titan Station was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a Federation medical vessel, designed to handle the most dangerous biological threats in the galaxy. Jake sat in a containment cell, watching the stars go by through a small window. He was not technically a prisoner. but the heavy security made it clear that he was not free to leave. Dr. Lisa Carter introduced herself on the second day of the journey. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and kind eyes that seemed to see everything. As a specialist in alien neurology, she had been called in to study what had happened to Jake. "How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting across from him in the containment cell. "Different," Jake replied. "I can hear things that were not there before, see patterns in the walls. Sometimes I know what people are going to say before they say it." Dr. Carter made notes on her tablet. "The weapon has integrated with your nervous system in ways we do not understand. Your brain scans show activity in areas that should not be active. It is as if new neural pathways have been created." Jake nodded. He could feel the weapon inside him, not as a foreign object, but as a natural part of his body. It whispered to him sometimes, showing him images of vast cities among the stars and beings of pure energy that moved between dimensions. "What do you see when you look at me?" Dr. Carter asked. Jake focused on her face. With the weapon's enhanced perception, he could see the electrical patterns in her brain, the way her heart pumped blood through her veins, even the microscopic movements of her muscles. "I see that you are worried about your daughter," he said. "She is sick, and you are trying to decide whether to tell her about your work here." Dr. Carter's eyes widened. "How could you possibly know that?" "The weapon shows me things," Jake explained. "It reads the energy patterns that all living beings produce. Your stress levels, your emotional state, even your recent memories create signals that I can interpret." The ship arrived at Titan Station 3 days later. The facility was massive, built into the surface of Saturn's largest moon. It served as the Federation's primary research center for dangerous or unknown technologies. Jake was escorted through corridors filled with laboratories and containment units. His new quarters were comfortable but clearly designed as a prison. The walls were made of energy-dampening materials, and cameras watched his every movement. Dr. Carter assured him that the restrictions were for everyone's safety, but Jake could sense the fear in the minds of the people around him. The testing began immediately. Teams of specialists ran every scan and analysis they could think of. They measured his brainwaves, tested his reflexes, and studied samples of his blood. The weapon had changed him at the cellular level, but the changes followed no pattern that Federation science could understand. "Remarkable," said Dr. Hayes, who had been transferred from the mining site. "Your neural activity is off the charts, but you show no signs of mental instability. Most species would have been driven insane by this level of consciousness expansion." Jake spent hours each day in testing chambers, demonstrating his new abilities. He could move small objects with his mind, interface with computer systems by touch, and perceive electromagnetic fields. The weapon was teaching him, slowly revealing new capabilities as his body adapted to its presence. The most disturbing discovery came during a routine medical scan. Dr. Carter found traces of an unknown energy signature in Jake's DNA, something that had not been there before his bonding with the weapon. "This is impossible," she muttered, staring at the results. "Your genetic code is being rewritten at the quantum level. The weapon is not just using your body as a host. It is transforming you into something new." Jake lay on the examination table, feeling the weapon's influence spreading through his system. He could access memories that were not his own, knowledge from a civilization that had died out thousands of years ago. The Voidborn had been more than just another alien species. They had been the first conscious beings in the galaxy, the architects of reality itself. "The weapon is not just a tool," he told Dr. Carter. "It is alive. It carries the consciousness of its creator, a Voidborn warrior named Zethkalar. He has been waiting for someone who could handle his knowledge and power." Dr. Carter recorded everything Jake told her, building a picture of the mysterious Voidborn civilization. They had been beings of pure energy who could manipulate matter at the subatomic level. Their technology was not built but grown, shaped by will and intention. Rather than physical construction, why did they disappear? Dr. Carter asked during one of their sessions. Jake closed his eyes and let the weapon's memories flow through him. He saw images of a great war, fought not with ships and soldiers but with reality itself. The Voidborn had faced an enemy that existed between dimensions, creatures that fed on the life force of entire worlds. They did not disappear, he said. They transcended? When they realized they could not defeat the enemy through conventional means, they evolved beyond physical existence. But they left safeguards behind, weapons and guardians, to protect the galaxy from future threats. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Federation leadership. If Jake was telling the truth, then the Voidborn artifacts scattered throughout the galaxy were not just historical curiosities but active defense systems. The implications were staggering, General Patricia Clark, the commanding officer of Titan Station, met with Jake personally. She was a stern woman with gray hair and cold blue eyes who had spent her career dealing with threats to Federation security. "If these weapons are as powerful as you claim," she said, "then we need to understand how to control them. The Federation cannot allow such technology to remain in the hands of individuals." Jake could sense the general's true intentions. She was not interested in protecting the galaxy. She wanted to use the weapons for the Federation's own purposes, to maintain their dominance over the lesser species. "The weapons cannot be controlled," Jake replied. "They choose their own bearers based on criteria we do not understand. Trying to force a bond would be both dangerous and useless." General Clark was not satisfied with this answer. She authorized more aggressive testing, procedures that pushed Jake's body and mind to their limits. The scientists subjected him to extreme temperatures, radiation, and psychological stress, trying to find ways to weaken his connection to the weapon. The torture sessions had the opposite effect. Each time they tried to break him, Jake's bond with the weapon grew stronger. He began to access deeper levels of Voidborn knowledge, learning about technologies that could reshape entire star systems. During one particularly brutal session, Jake experienced a vision that changed everything. He saw other humans throughout the galaxy, each bonded with different Voidborn weapons. They were scattered across dozens of worlds, hiding their abilities from the Federation authorities who would try to capture or kill them. "You are not alone," the weapon's voice whispered in his mind. "The selection process has been ongoing for decades. Your species was chosen long ago, but the Federation has been systematically eliminating the chosen ones." Jake learned the truth about humanity's role in the galaxy. While other species had evolved specialized abilities, humans had developed something more valuable: the capacity for growth and adaptation. The Voidborn had recognized this potential and designed their weapons to seek out humanity specifically. The weapon showed him memories of other chosen humans. Captain Susan Taylor, who had vanished during humanity's first contact with the Zentari, had been bonded with a weapon that could navigate between dimensions. Marine Sergeant Danny Rodriguez had merged with a device that could manipulate time itself before being killed by Federation forces. "They fear what we might become," Jake realized. "The other species have reached the limits of their evolution, but humans are still growing. The weapons amplify that growth, making us potentially more powerful than any other race in the galaxy." Dr. Carter began to notice changes in Jake's behavior. He was becoming more confident, more aware of his surroundings. The weapon was not just enhancing his abilities but shaping his personality as well. "The bonding process is accelerating," she reported to General Clark. "His neural patterns are becoming increasingly alien. We may be losing the human Jake Morrison entirely." But Jake was not lost. He was becoming something new, something that bridged the gap between human and Voidborn consciousness. The weapon had chosen him not just for his individual qualities, but for his potential to help humanity take its next evolutionary step. As the testing continued, Jake began to sense disturbances in the fabric of reality itself. The weapon was detecting cracks in the dimensional barriers, places where something vast and hungry was trying to break through. The ancient enemy that had driven the Voidborn to transcendence was stirring again. "The seals are weakening," he told Dr. Carter during one of their sessions. The Federation's wars and conflicts are creating psychic disturbances that feed the creatures between dimensions. If we do not act soon, they will break through. Time was running out, and Jake knew that his captivity at Titan Station was preventing him from fulfilling his true purpose. The weapon had not chosen him to be a laboratory specimen, but to be a guardian, a protector of the galaxy against threats that the Federation could not even imagine. The breakthrough came during Jake's 4th week at Titan Station. Dr. Carter had been studying brain scans from all the major species in the Federation, comparing them to Jake's transformed neural patterns. What she found changed everything they thought they knew about human evolution. "Look at this," she said, showing Jake the results on her tablet. "Every other species has specialized brain structures. The Zentari have enlarged telepathic centers. The Krell have overdeveloped aggression nodes. The Axiom have computational matrices built into their synthetic minds. But humans are different." Jake studied the colorful brain scans. Even with the weapon's enhanced perception, the medical data was hard to understand. "What makes us special?" "Flexibility," Dr. Carter explained. "Where other species evolved to be very good at one thing, humans evolved to be moderately good at everything. Our brains can adapt and rewire themselves in ways that other species cannot. The Voidborn weapons are not just tools. They are consciousness amplifiers that need this kind of mental flexibility to function." The revelation made sense of everything Jake had experienced. The weapon had not chosen him randomly. It had selected him because his human brain could handle the transformation without breaking down. Other species would have been driven insane by the consciousness expansion, but humans could grow and adapt. Dr. Carter's research took on new urgency when she discovered something disturbing in the Federation's historical records. Over the past 30 years, dozens of humans had gone missing under mysterious circumstances. The official reports claimed they had died in accidents or disappeared during routine missions, but the pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. "They have been hunting us," Jake realized as he read through the files. "Every time a human shows signs of unusual abilities, the Federation makes them disappear." The evidence was overwhelming. Captain Susan Taylor had been reported killed in a navigation accident, but witness accounts described strange energy readings from her ship before it vanished. Marine Sergeant Danny Rodriguez had supposedly died in a training explosion, but security footage showed him moving faster than humanly possible just before the blast. "The Federation has been systematically eliminating chosen humans for decades, Doctor," Carter said quietly. "They are terrified of what we might become if we were allowed to develop our abilities." Jake felt anger building inside him, amplified by the weapon's power. The Federation claimed to value diversity and cooperation, but they had been committing genocide against his own species. The other races feared humanity's potential and had decided to destroy it before it could threaten their dominance. General Clark seemed to sense Jake's growing hostility. She increased security around his quarters and authorized more aggressive testing procedures. Teams of scientists worked around the clock to find ways to separate him from the weapon or at least control its power. "We need to understand how the bonding process works," she told Dr. Carter during a private meeting. "If we can replicate it with other species, we can create warriors that serve Federation interests instead of whatever agenda these weapons might have." Dr. Carter protested the escalating experiments, but she was overruled. Jake was subjected to procedures that pushed his body and mind to their absolute limits. They tried to overload his nervous system with electrical current, hoping to disrupt his connection to the weapon. They exposed him to psychic attacks from Zentari telepaths, trying to break his mental defenses. Each torture session only strengthened Jake's resolve. The weapon showed him more memories of the Voidborn civilization, revealing the true scope of their achievements. They had not just been another alien species, but the first conscious beings in the galaxy, the ones who had shaped reality itself into its current form. "Your species is our heir," the weapon's voice whispered in his mind during one particularly brutal session. The Voidborn saw in humanity the potential to guide the galaxy toward its next phase of evolution. But first, you must survive the fear and hatred of those who would hold you back. Jake learned that the dimensional barriers protecting the galaxy were not natural phenomena but artificial constructs created by the Voidborn. Like a dam holding back a flood, these barriers kept the creatures from the spaces between dimensions from entering normal reality. The barriers required constant maintenance, a task that the Voidborn had intended for humanity to inherit. "The Devourers are stirring again," Jake told Dr. Carter during one of their sessions. "I can feel them pressing against the barriers, looking for weak points. The Federation's wars and conflicts create psychic disturbances that weaken the dimensional walls." Dr. Carter recorded everything Jake told her, building a comprehensive picture of the threat facing the galaxy. The Devourers were not just another enemy species, but entities of pure hunger that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They fed on life force, consciousness, and the very fabric of reality itself. "How do we stop them?" Dr. Carter asked. "The weapons," Jake replied. "Each one is designed to strengthen the dimensional barriers in a specific way. But they need to work together, and their bearers need to cooperate. The Federation's policy of hunting chosen humans is actually making the galaxy more vulnerable to attack." General Clark refused to believe Jake's warnings. She was convinced that the weapons were simply advanced technology that could be reverse-engineered and mass-produced. Her teams worked frantically to understand the bonding process, using increasingly desperate measures. The breaking point came when they brought in a volunteer test subject, a young Federation officer named Lieutenant Kevin Walsh. Despite Jake's protests, they attempted to force a bonding between Walsh and a fragment of the weapon that had been surgically removed from Jake's nervous system. The result was catastrophic. Walsh's mind could not handle the consciousness expansion, and he was driven instantly insane. He began screaming about creatures made of shadow and hunger, clawing at his own face as if trying to remove invisible parasites. The weapon fragment destabilized, creating a small tear in the dimensional barrier. For just a moment, something pressed through the gap. Jake felt its presence like ice water in his veins, a hunger so vast and cold that it seemed to drain the warmth from the entire laboratory. The emergency systems activated, sealing the breach, but the damage was done. "You have no idea what you are dealing with," Jake told General Clark as medical teams sedated the screaming lieutenant. "The weapons are not just tools. They are living extensions of the Voidborn consciousness, and they will only bond with those who can handle their power. Trying to force the process will only create more weak points for the Devourers to exploit." But General Clark was not listening. She ordered the testing to continue, convinced that the benefits outweighed the risks. Jake realized that the Federation leadership would never understand the true nature of the threat they were facing. They were too focused on maintaining their own power to see the bigger picture. During his 5th week in captivity, Jake received an unexpected visitor. Captain Roy Henderson, his former commanding officer from the mining operation, had been granted permission to see him. Roy was a solid man with graying hair and worry lines around his eyes. "You look different," Roy said as they sat in the visitation room. "Older somehow?" "I am different," Jake replied. "The weapon has shown me things about the galaxy that I wish I did not know. The Federation is not what we thought it was, Roy. They have been hunting and killing humans for decades, and now they are weakening the very defenses that protect us all." Roy leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There are others who know the truth. Humans who have been watching and waiting. Dr. Carter is not the only one who has been asking questions about the missing people." Jake felt a surge of hope. "How many others?" "More than you might think," Roy said. "We have been building a network, staying in contact with families of the disappeared, tracking Federation movements. We know about at least 6 other humans who have bonded with Voidborn weapons. They are in hiding, but they are alive." The revelation changed everything. Jake was not alone in his fight against the Federation's oppression. There were other chosen humans out there, each carrying a piece of the Voidborn legacy. If they could find each other and work together, they might be able to fulfill their true purpose as guardians of the galaxy. "We need to get you out of here," Roy continued. "The Federation is planning something big. General Clark has been in contact with the other species' governments, and they are all terrified of what humans might become. They are planning to implement new restrictions on human travel and settlement, maybe even forced sterilization programs. Jake felt the weapon's anger flowing through him. The Federation was not just hunting chosen humans, but targeting the entire species. They were so afraid of humanity's potential that they were willing to commit genocide to prevent it from being realized. "Tell the others I am ready," Jake said. "The weapon has been teaching me about Federation security systems and dimensional manipulation. When the time comes, I will be able to help with the escape." Roy nodded and stood to leave. "Hold on a little longer. Help is coming." As Jake watched his friend walk away, he felt the weapon's consciousness touching his mind. The Voidborn had faced similar challenges in their own evolution, opposition from older species who feared change. The rescue came at 3 in the morning when the station was operating on a skeleton crew. Jake had been expecting it, warned by the weapon's ability to sense disturbances in the facility's energy patterns. He felt the explosion before he heard it. A ripple through the dimensional fabric that told him the attack had begun. Emergency alarms blared through the corridors as sections of Titan Station lost power. Jake stood in his cell, feeling the weapon's power flowing through his nervous system like liquid fire. The energy-dampening walls that had contained him for weeks suddenly seemed as fragile as paper. "Stand back," he whispered to himself then. Placed his hands against the reinforced door. The weapon's energy flowed through his fingers, disrupting the molecular bonds that held the metal together. The door simply dissolved, its atoms scattering like dust in the wind. Jake stepped through the opening into a corridor filled with emergency lighting and the sound of running feet. Dr. Carter appeared at the end of the hallway, her face pale with worry. "Jake, what is happening?" "The entire station is under attack. My people are coming for me," Jake replied. "You can come with us or stay here and face whatever the Federation does to those who know too much." Before Dr. Carter could answer, a figure in black armor appeared behind her. Jake recognized Captain Roy Henderson despite the combat gear he was wearing. Roy carried an energy rifle and moved with the confidence of someone who had done this before. "Time to go," Roy said. "We have maybe 10 minutes before Federation reinforcements arrive." They ran through the corridors as the station shook around. Then Jake could hear weapon fire and explosions from other sections. His rescuers had clearly brought enough firepower to keep the security forces busy. "How did you get past the defenses?" Dr. Carter asked as they reached an emergency stairwell. "We had help," Roy replied. "Someone on the inside disabled the weapon systems and gave us the security codes." Jake already knew who had helped them. During his weeks in captivity, he had sensed other minds touched by Voidborn technology. Not all the chosen humans had been captured or killed. Some had infiltrated the Federation's own ranks. Hiding their abilities while working to protect their fellow humans, they reached the docking bay, where a sleek ship waited with its engines already running. Jake recognized the design as a modified Federation courier vessel fast enough to outrun most military ships. As they boarded, he saw other figures in the pilot seats, their faces hidden by helmets. "Welcome aboard," said a familiar voice over the intercom. It was Commander Helen Wright, a former Federation officer who had supposedly died in a training accident 3 years earlier. "Everyone strap in. This is going to be a rough ride." The ship launched from Titan Station just as Federation patrol vessels began to arrive. Jake watched through a porthole as energy beams streaked past them, missing by mere meters. The pilot pushed the engines to their maximum output, racing toward the edge of Saturn's gravity well. "Dimensional jump in 30 seconds, Commander Wright announced. "Jake, we are going to need your help with the navigation." Jake made his way to the bridge, where he found Wright sitting at the pilot's controls. She was a woman in her 40s with short red hair and intense green eyes. When she looked at him, Jake could sense the weapon bonded to her nervous system, different from his own but unmistakably void-born. "Your weapon is a navigation device," Jake realized. "Among other things," Wright replied. "It allows me to see the currents between dimensions, find safe paths through hyperspace that the Federation cannot track." Right now, we need to get to the outer rim without being followed. Jake placed his hands on the navigation console, letting his weapon interface with the ship's computers. Together, his and Wright's abilities created a map of dimensional space. That was far more detailed than anything Federation science could produce. They found a route that would take them through 11 different hyperspace layers, making pursuit impossible. The journey to the outer rim took 18 hours. During the trip, Jake learned more about the resistance network that had rescued him. It was larger and more organized than he had imagined, with cells operating throughout Federation space. "We have been building this for years," Wright explained, as they traveled through hyperspace. "Every time the Federation made another human disappear, we investigated. Every time we found evidence of void-born weapons, we tried to reach the Chosen before the authorities did." Dr. Carter listened to everything with growing amazement. "How many of you are there?" "More than the Federation knows," Wright replied, "but fewer than we need. The enemy we are really fighting requires all the weapons working together, and we have only found 7 so far." Their destination was an asteroid base hidden in the Kepler belt, far from any inhabited system. The facility had been built inside a massive rock formation, invisible to most sensors. As they docked, Jake could feel the presence of other void-born weapons nearby. The base was larger than he had expected, with multiple levels carved into the asteroid's interior. Wright led them through corridors lined with living quarters, workshops, and training facilities. Jake realized that this was not just a hideout, but a fully functional military installation. "We have been preparing for the real war," Wright explained. "The Federation thinks we are terrorists or criminals, but they do not understand what is really at stake." Jake met the other chosen humans in a central meeting chamber. Each one carried a different type of void-born weapon, and each had been transformed in unique ways. Maria Santos had been a construction engineer before her bonding. Now she could manipulate matter at the quantum level, rebuilding reality according to her will. Pete Johnson had been a school teacher, but his weapon allowed him to see all possible futures and choose the best path forward. Kelly Davis had been a medical technician before her transformation. Her weapon could manipulate life force itself, healing any injury and even bringing people back from the edge of death. There was also Carlos Martinez, whose weapon controlled electromagnetic fields, and Lisa Park, who could phase in and out of normal space. The 7th member of their group was the most surprising. Lieutenant Commander Alan Scott had been a Federation officer until his bonding with a weapon that controlled time itself. He had used his abilities to fake his own death and escape before the authorities could capture him. "Together, we form a network," Wright explained as the group gathered around a holographic display. "Each weapon covers a different aspect of reality manipulation. When we work in concert, we can create stable zones where the dimensional barriers are strongest." Jake felt his own weapon responding to the presence of the others. The devices were designed to work together, amplifying each other's abilities. When all 7 were in close proximity, their combined power was enough to affect entire star systems. "The Devourers are getting stronger," Pete Johnson said, his eyes reflecting visions of possible futures. "I can see the barriers weakening in dozens of locations. The Federation's conflicts and the fear they are spreading through the galaxy are creating psychic disturbances that feed the enemy." Kelly Davis nodded grimly. "I have been monitoring the dimensional readings from across Federation space. Each time they hunt down another chosen human, each time they spread fear and hatred, the barriers get weaker." Jake understood the cruel irony of their situation. The Federation's attempts to eliminate the chosen humans were actually making the galaxy more vulnerable to the very threat the weapons were designed to prevent. Fear and division weakened the dimensional barriers, while unity and cooperation strengthened them. "What do we do?" Dr. Carter asked. She had been listening to everything with the fascination of a scientist and the horror of someone who was beginning to understand the true scope of the crisis. "We fight," Wright replied. "Not just against the Federation forces that hunt us, but against the real enemy. The barriers are failing, and soon the Devourers will break through in force. When that happens, we need to be ready." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The weapon inside him carried the hopes and knowledge of an entire extinct civilization. The Voidborn had trusted humanity to protect the galaxy, but first they had to survive the fear and hatred of their own supposed allies. "The Federation will come for us," he said. "They know we escaped, and they will not stop hunting us." "Let them come," Maria Santos said, her weapon causing the air around her to shimmer with barely contained energy. "We are not the same frightened. Humans they have been picking off one by one. Together we are something they cannot understand or defeat." Over the following days, Jake trained with the other Chosen, learning to coordinate his abilities with theirs. The weapons responded to their unity, revealing new capabilities that none of them had accessed alone. They could create temporary dimensional pockets, manipulate space and time, and most importantly, strengthen the barriers that protected reality itself. But even as they grew stronger, the situation in Federation space was deteriorating. Reports came in of increased military activity, new restrictions on human travel, and rumors of camps being built to contain humans showing unusual abilities. The other species were uniting in their fear of humanity's potential. "They are planning something big," Roy reported during one of his intelligence briefings. The first dimensional barrier failed above Rigel Prime on a Tuesday morning. Jake felt it collapse from 3 star systems away, the sensation like watching a dam burst in slow motion. Through his weapon's enhanced perception, he could see the fabric of reality tearing as something vast and hungry pressed through from the spaces between dimensions. "It has begun," Pete Johnson said from across the command center, his eyes reflecting visions of possible futures. "The Devourers have found their first major breach point. Rigel Prime has maybe 6 hours before the planet is completely consumed." Jake watched the sensor readings as they came in from Federation monitoring stations. The reports made no sense to the alien scientists studying them. Energy readings were spiking to impossible levels, then dropping to absolute zero in random patterns. Ships that tried to investigate simply vanished without sending distress signals. "The Federation still does not understand what they are facing," Commander Wright said as she studied the tactical displays. "They are sending military vessels to investigate an energy anomaly. They have no idea they are flying into the mouth of creatures that exist in multiple dimensions." The Chosen humans had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Their asteroid base had become a center of resistance activity, coordinating with human cells throughout Federation space. But they had hoped to have more time to strengthen the remaining barriers before the Devourers made their first major breakthrough. "We have to respond," Jake said. "Even if the Federation considers us enemies, we cannot let an entire planet be destroyed." Dr. Carter, who had become an unofficial member of their group, pulled up detailed scans of the Rigel system. "The planet has over 2 billion inhabitants from dozens of different species. If these Devourers are as dangerous as you say, we are talking about the complete annihilation of all life in the system." Maria Santos stood at the central holographic display, her weapon causing the air around her to shimmer with quantum energy. The barriers around Rigel were already weakened by the Federation's military exercises in that sector. All those weapons tests and war games created psychic disturbances that the Devourers could exploit. Jake felt his weapon responding to the crisis, showing him visions of reality itself being consumed by creatures of pure hunger. The Devourers did not just destroy planets. They erased them from existence entirely, feeding on the life force, consciousness, and even the historical significance of everything they touched. "How long do we have before they spread to other systems?" Dr. Carter asked. "Not long," replied Kelly Davis, whose life force manipulation abilities let her sense the health of entire star systems. "The breach at Rigel is growing larger. Soon it will be stable enough for the Devourers to establish a permanent foothold in our dimension." The decision was made quickly. Despite the Federation's hostility toward them, the Chosen humans could not stand by and watch billions of innocent people die. They would have to reveal themselves publicly and use their combined abilities to seal the dimensional breach. The Federation fleet will try to stop us, Wright warned as they prepared to depart. They still think we are the real threat. Then we show them what a real threat looks like. Jake replied, the journey to Rigel took 8 hours using the dimensional shortcuts that Wright's navigation weapon could access. As they emerged from hyperspace, Jake was struck by the wrongness of what he saw. The space around Rigel Prime looked normal to conventional sensors, but his enhanced perception could see the tears in reality itself. The Devourers were like wounds in the fabric of existence, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light and matter equally. They moved through three-dimensional space in ways that hurt to look at, their forms shifting between states of being that had no names in any language. Federation fleet approaching, Carlos Martinez reported from the sensor station. His electromagnetic manipulation abilities gave him superior detection capabilities. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort vessels. They are powering up weapons. Admiral Marcus Kane's voice came over the communication system, filled with authority and barely controlled anger. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of Federation emergency protocols. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Jake opened a channel to the Federation fleet. Admiral Kane, this is Jake Morrison. I know you consider me a terrorist, but right now I am the only chance this system has for survival. The creatures attacking Rigel Prime are not something your weapons can handle. Morrison, Kane replied, his voice cold. You are under arrest for crimes against Federation security. Surrender immediately. Before Jake could respond, one of the Federation cruisers opened fire. Energy beams streaked toward their ship, but Maria Santos was ready. Her matter manipulation abilities created a quantum barrier that absorbed the incoming fire and converted it into harmless light. We do not have time for this, Wright said urgently. The dimensional breach is expanding. Soon it will be too large for us to seal. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of fighting the Federation fleet, he used his weapon to broadcast a message across all communication channels in the system. Every ship, every space station, every planet-bound receiver would hear his words. My name is Jake Morrison, and I am bonded with a weapon created by the Voidaborn civilization. For weeks, the Federation has told you that humans like me are dangerous. Criminals who threaten galactic peace, they are wrong. We are the only defense this galaxy has against the creatures that are destroying Rigel Prime right now. On the main display, Pete Johnson's precognitive abilities created a real-time map of the Devourer incursion. The creatures were spreading across Rigel Prime like a cancer, consuming entire continents in minutes. Cities that had stood for thousands of years simply ceased to exist, erased from reality so completely that even the memories of them began to fade. The Devourers exist between dimensions, Jake continued his broadcast. They feed on life, consciousness, and reality itself. Your weapons cannot hurt them because they do not fully exist in our space. But the Voidborn created tools to fight them, weapons that can manipulate the very fabric of existence. Admiral Kane's fleet had stopped firing, their crews watching in horror as the destruction on Rigel Prime became visible even to normal sensors. Entire mountain ranges were simply not there anymore, leaving gaps in the landscape that hurt to look at. The Federation has been hunting and killing humans bonded with these weapons for decades, Jake said. They were so afraid of what we might become that they weakened the very defenses protecting the galaxy. Every act of hatred, every moment of division and fear, makes the dimensional barriers weaker. Lisa Park used her phasing abilities to scout the dimensional breach, moving in and out of normal space to get close to the Devourers without being detected. The main breach point is in Rigel Prime's upper atmosphere, she reported. But there are smaller tiers opening throughout the system. The 7 chosen humans work together, their weapons creating a network of energy that spanned the entire star system. Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond his individual body, merging with the others to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Initiating barrier reconstruction, Wright announced. Her navigation weapon guided the others, showing them exactly where to focus their efforts. The process was like trying to repair a shattered window while a hurricane raged on the other side. The devourers fought back, pressing against the barriers, with a hunger that seemed infinite. Jake felt their alien consciousness touching his mind, a coldness so absolute that it made him understand what true extinction meant. But humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to work together, despite their differences. The chosen humans held their formation, each weapon contributing its unique abilities to the reconstruction effort. Matter manipulation sealed the physical tiers. Time control slowed the devourer's advance. Life force manipulation strengthened the barriers themselves. Admiral Kane's voice came over the communication system again, but this time it was filled with amazement rather than anger. Morrison, our sensors are showing dimensional stability returning to the system. How is this possible? Because we are doing what we were created to do, Jake replied. The Voidborn chose humanity to be the galaxy's guardians, not its rulers. We are here to protect everyone, whether they understand it or not. The final barrier snapped into place like a puzzle piece finding its proper position. The devourers were pushed back into the spaces between dimensions, their breach points sealed with energy that would hold for millennia. Rigel Prime was saved, though vast sections of the planet would need to be rebuilt. Jake felt the other chosen humans beginning to separate their consciousness from the group link. Each one was exhausted but triumphant. They had proven that working together, humans could accomplish what no other species in the galaxy could manage. Admiral Kane, Jake said into the communication system, we need to talk. All of us. The barrier. At Rigel was just one of thousands throughout the galaxy, and they are all weakening. The Federation needs to understand what is really at stake here. The response came not from Kane, but from General Patricia Clark, whose voice was transmitted. From Titan Station? Morrison, you have just demonstrated abilities that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy.